Hello, agentpreneurs, and welcome to episode 112 of the Daily List Report. We've got an amazing guest back on the show today, Bryan Casella. Bryan is the founder of Team BC at eXp Realty. He's got an incredible presence on social media and a great coaching business. I'm pulling it up right now. All the links are below. So YouTube's got 166,000 subscribers. Congrats, Bryan. That's awesome. Bunch of great video and content you should definitely check out. His Instagram is amazing. Lots of good insights into who he is, right? We've talked about this. This is a great opportunity to reveal a little bit about who you are. And look, some people are going to like you, some people aren't going to like you, and that's okay. You have to be confident in putting your brand out there and having it be authentic. So check him out on Instagram, Bryan Casella, and then he's got a coaching business. Go to bryancasella.com. Again, we're going to link to that in the comments below. The first chat I had with Bryan was back episode 79. It was about finding your confidence, and I think that I can't imagine a better person to learn how to find confidence than from Bryan. But turns out he's a super smart dude as well, right? So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to bring him on. So Bryan, welcome back to the show. Thanks for being here.
Randy, fellow car nut, what's up, man? Thanks for having me again. The first conversation was cool. I liked it and really appreciated it because it was different, compared to the regular conversations we have in real estate and sales. And I think that's some of the information that people really need to hear and understand to really break through, especially now, right? We have so many things coming at people from different angles. And I think, guarding your state of mind and being able to conquer that, I truly believe now more than ever is extremely, extremely important.
Oh, it's critical, right? I mean, in addition to just, keeping up with your own business, you got to keep up with the world. We got an election year, a pandemic. I mean, there's a lot being thrown at people. So I think that advice is sound. Hey, Bryan, why don't we do this? For those who missed your last show, and we're going to link to that as well, why don't you just take a moment, reintroduce yourself, and also talk a little bit about what's going on. You got some really cool stuff happening in your business that I think is relevant and interesting to our audience.
Yeah, absolutely. So Bryan Casella, I've been in the real estate business now for about 7 years, almost to the day. I got my license back in 2013 after finishing a basketball career due to injury, and everything was new to me, sales, right? Entrepreneurship, business, just kind of jumped in full force and said, hey, I'm going to figure this thing out. For my first 3 years, I was a solo agent. I did fairly well and started documenting what I was doing along the journey. Started getting some recognition on social media, started, speaking and, helping other agents and that kind of thing. And it just kind of really accelerated after that. I started building my team locally. As of 2 or 2.5 months ago, actually, I started expanding my team outside of Southern California. So I now have 2 extension teams, one in Central Florida and one in the Northeast region of the United States, including New Jersey, Philadelphia, and Delaware. I have 10 team members total now. They're doing really good. I think in the first 2 months, like we were discussing off camera, they've already pretty much sold and put under contract about 20 homes. I think awesome. 22 now as of today. So they're doing really well and things have just been blowing up. And the ultimate goal is to make Team BC a global brand, especially in the real estate world.
I love that. Hey, Bryan, let's take a detour for a second just on this topic, right? So you started out as a solo agent. I think given your background, basketball and other things, sort of your workout routines, like you're a confident, motivated dude, right? Who wants big things. And was there a switch that flipped during that? Did you always know you wanted to build Team BC into a global brand? Talk a little bit about that evolution, because I think that's important, that mindset going into it. How did you make that switch and how do you get there?
Yeah, great question. So, coming up, even in basketball, I had a big vision of, making it far in basketball. Even when I was a kid and I started playing, I already envisioned myself playing in the NBA. Now, I never made it, but that seed was planted back then, meaning, I want to be number one at what I do, and I don't care what people tell me because, that seed was in me. However, everything around me pointed and pushed the opposite. Hey, you're wasting your time. What are you doing? You're not tall enough, blah, 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 right? You shouldn't even be playing basketball. You're not going to make the varsity team. You're not going to play in college. You're not going to play professionally, right? I heard that, throughout my whole life. So it almost forced me to kind of build that chip on my shoulder, which I think a lot of people can relate to, not having support from your family and friends, even when you say, hey, this is my dream and I want to go for it. When you're a kid and you're playing in the dirt and you say you want to be an astronaut, everybody's for it. But suddenly somewhere around the high school age, they say, hey, you got to get with reality, get a real job, stop dreaming, So somewhere along the lines, we lose that.
Yeah.
When I got into real estate, I kind of avoided joining a team. I got recruited a lot. I don't really talk about this, but I got recruited heavily in my first 2 years because people saw the hustle and dedication that I was putting in. And it wasn't necessarily the results in the beginning because, yeah, I was selling homes, but I wasn't one of these freak stories of selling 30, 40, 50 homes your first year. I think I sold 13 properties my first year, which is good, but it's
Yeah.
not this astronomical number based on the effort that I was putting in. You would have thought if I'm door knocking and cold calling 4 or 5,
Yeah.
6, 7 hours a day that I'd already be selling 100 homes, but I wasn't, right? There was a learning curve. I was going through my own stuff. I wasn't that good. My conversion rates weren't that good. But I knew in the beginning, maybe not necessarily that I wanted to make Team BC like a global brand or a huge brand, but I wanted to build my own thing, right? I appreciated the fact that people were recruiting me, but it was, you know what? I want to leave my own footprint here and stamp, and I want to build this thing myself, not only to prove to everybody else, more importantly, to prove to myself that I can do this. I can be this, athlete converted businessman who knows nothing, has no connections, has no real advantages, we can say, um, and just build this thing. So about 2 or 3 years in, before I really started expanding my team, based on the results that I was getting in the business and also a lot of the buzz that I was seeing with YouTube and social media,
Hmm.
that's kind of when it clicked, Randy, that I could really blow this thing up. It was two things. One, I saw my own efforts bearing fruit. But number two, I saw the impact that a lot of what I was doing, not even necessarily teaching the time, but just what I was putting out was really impacting people, right? I was getting messages and phone calls and emails like daily, like, man, that's so cool to see you build this thing. Hey, I've been following you since day one. It's been very, very inspiring to see you grow this thing from the
Yeah.
ground up, from, making, phone calls and going door to door in your little apartment now, like you're in this house and now you're expanding. Now you have like a couple thousand followers on YouTube. This is cool. So seeing the impact that it was having on people in the audience, even though it was small at that time, and then seeing the results I was getting in the business, that's kind of when those ideas and that storm started kind of brewing a little bit, because that's when I sat down and said, maybe I have something here. If I'm with this small audience and with this, beginning portion of my journey having this large of an impact, there's something here. And that's when I started looking more at, hey, what does the next year, 2 years, 5 years look like? What can be done? What can I do? Do I want to grow a team? That kind of got my wheels turning to really focus on, okay, I want to really build my team out here and grow that, and then expand this thing nationwide and then eventually worldwide. Um, that's initially when that seed was planted. Now,
Hmm.
the serious negotiations of expanding outside of Southern California didn't happen for probably 2 or 3 years after that. But that initial seed was definitely planted right at that like fork in the road where I started building my personal team here in Southern California, which was about 3 years into the business.
That's awesome, Brian. That's really interesting. One of the things that brings to mind, I hear a lot of talk from people about work-life balance, right? And one of the difficult things about being an agent, sometimes I think about it, it's like being a lawyer, right? Like if your client calls, you better answer that phone because you don't know if they're in jail, you don't know if they just got served some lawsuit, right? Like you are always on call, and that's a challenging thing. I read a book, Brian, earlier this year. It's called The 9 Lies About Work, and one of the lies is about work-life balance. And it said it's not about finding work-life balance. In fact, the reality is it's hard to find balance in anything. It's about finding love in your work. That's really what it's about. So when you think about the hustle that you put in, and I talked to this top agent, Gogo is her name, in Michigan a couple weeks ago on the show. She's awesome, and she puts her hustle front and center, man. She's like 2 a.m. She's like writing offers, and then she's making her kids lunch, and like it's insane, right? Like, how do you think about this concept of work-life balance, or when you're doing your coaching, how do you get an agent to say, okay, find love in your work, right? You're going to work a lot, but that's okay, or maybe it's not okay, right? How do you think about that?
Yeah. Oh man, I completely agree with what you said, and I've been really pushing for years to tell people that there has to be a life and who you are and what you do to be a part of you. I think people really grind their gears about, well, how can I find balance, or how can I, shut everything off, and then it's like they're playing 2 or 3 different hats and different characters, and I feel like that separation is what causes people to try to answer this unanswerable question of work-life balance, right? And I really think no matter what you do as a human being, even though people don't like this word, some sort of sacrifice is going to be involved.
Yes.
Let me give you an example. Let's say I commit to, doing this work in real estate like I did in the beginning and building my character. Well, a lot of things are going to be sacrificed, right? My ability to relax all the time is going to be gone. I'm going to have to confront my inner demons constantly. I'm going to have to be faced with rejection and being beat up, getting down, scraping my elbows, getting back up. So there's going to be this resistance, right? Because for you to evolve, for you to grow, there has to be the darkness before the light. And that's what I tell people. So in that process, it's going to be required that you lock horns with you and whatever it is that you're doing. And that requires a full commitment, right? Because no change, whether it's physical, mental, spiritual, emotional, is easy. So when I look at now, I take that concept and I move it over now to work. When I look at my work and what I dedicate my life to, that's an integral part of this evolution and process. So how could I separate from this thing and say, well, at 3 p.m., I'm going to turn it off and be the real Bryan? You can't do that, right? Because to me, now you're in essence being Jim Carrey and me, myself, and Irene, and you have split personalities. And I think that's what causes people to have these issues is, well, when I work, I'm a different person. In my personal life, I'm a different person. And it causes 3 or 4 identities to clash all the time. And that's what I believe is one of the root causes of people suffering mentally is that.
Yeah, no, that's interesting, Bryan. When you talk about sacrifice, it reminds me of something, right? Which is, for each one of us, this is a very personal decision. You have to decide sort of where that line is, right? So I'll give you an example. In my last company, I had to go to New York a lot, right? Once or twice a month, I was going to New York. And I have kids. They were young at the time. And so I made the decision, rather than flying Sunday morning so I can get there in the afternoon and have a nice dinner and relax at the hotel, is that I would take red eyes. So every time I went to New York, I took a Sunday night red eye. 10:30 at night was the flight. So I could see the kids off to bed, head to the airport, take off. I'd land at 6:30 in the morning at JFK, go to the hotel, take a nap, and then do my meetings, and I'd go. Sometimes I'd be back the next day or 3 days later or whatever it was, right? So, your point is valid that there is going to be sacrifice, there are going to be trade-offs, and it's an individual decision to decide what those things are. It's hard, right, when you're an agent, because when that client calls and you're in the middle of dinner or you're at the T-ball game, man, it's really difficult to be able to do that.
Yeah, and eventually you can evolve, right? Like now I have people in place. So if somebody calls at 5 or 6 and we're not available, I have somebody there to talk to them. So even that in itself isn't permanent. You can eventually build up a structure, systemize things, and grow your business to the point where you can fill in those gaps and dot the I's and cross the T's. So the beginning portion, of course, you're going to have to sacrifice, but it's a part of the evolution, right? The person who starts as a single employee from CEO all the way down to janitor eventually can grow their institution and their organization and put the people in place. So I just think it's a part of the journey and people need to accept it. And then also tied with this, and then I'll pass it back to you, is even in the beginning, one thing that I did that really helped me with this concept was I had an idea of what I wanted my business to be, and I set standards from day one. So I set standards when I'm going to shut off, right? And people know, and I tell my clients, hey, if you call me past 7 p.m., I'm going to return your call the next day at 8 a.m. or 12 p.m., right? When I met with people, I had a standard for what my commission was going to be, and I wasn't going to fold, right? I had a standard for, hey, this is when I'm going to meet with people. I have this window and this window, right? And I think if more agents did that, they wouldn't fall into this trap about feeling like they're running around like a chicken with their head cut off. We have to set standards. When I look at every top professional in every field, they have a standard. If I call my attorney or my doctor or my dentist, I'm not on their time, right? Or they're not on my time. They say, hey, dude, I have an opening at this time. I can't say, well, drop everything. Me, come over right now. He's like, dude, talk to my assistant and get in the calendar, right? And I respect that, and I'm going to do it. So we have to do the same thing as an agent. Just because we don't have the fancy degree doesn't mean that we can't do that. You can run your business how you want. And when I look at a common denominator between, all the top people that I've met in this industry and outside of this industry, they have those standards literally chiseled in stone on their wall. If we're going to use that reference, like that's the standard. And unless this is a exception to the rule situation, like they have a celebrity come in from out of town who they need to show homes to in this 1 hour window that one day, those standards are set in stone and you're going to abide by them. And I think that's probably one of the biggest issues, especially for newer agents, is feeling like they're worthy of setting a standard from day one when you absolutely can. You know why? Because it's your business. Run it how you want to run it.
It's very true, Brian, and I think that what compounds that, especially for newer agents, is it ties into the last conversation that you and I had, which is about confidence, right? It's really hard to say, look, this is my playbook, these are my rules, I'm going to work my ass off for you, right? But I'm a person too. I have a family, or I need down, whatever it is. Like, people understand that. I think that transparency, that authenticity is critical. I want to make one side note, Brian, just to the topic that I made before. So, as I mentioned, I have kids, right? And for those of you out there listening who have kids, here's what I have found to be wildly successful, because I'm an entrepreneur, right? Running a company and working all the time, frankly, is I got my kids from a young age invested in my business, right? They celebrated the successes of this business. And so, when I said, hey guys, I have to go to New York, it wasn't, oh, Dad, you're leaving. It was, go get them, Dad. Like, how are we doing? How is this business growing? And I'll tell you, it is the most rewarding thing ever. We do these, Brian, we do these milestone stickers at the company. When we cross a certain milestone, we make a sticker. My kids have these stickers on their water bottles, on their laptops, and I come home and I'm like, all right, sticker day. They're like, sweet, what's the sticker? Like, getting them invested in your business as you're growing it, like, it's so rewarding, Brian. Honestly, I just love it.
I bet, and I've recommended that to a lot of people who are in relationships who have kids. Involve them. Hey,
Yes.
if I hit my goals this year, come August, we're going to go 2 weeks over to Disney World and we're going to hang out and have a good time.
Exactly.
Now the kids are involved. So that's another reason I always tell people too, to be open about what they're doing, because not only is it a measure of accountability, but other people like celebrating with you. They want to be invested in what you're doing, and that's kind of what I've created with the culture here too, is we're checking in, twice a week in our meetings. We're always bringing up what our goals are, if we're hitting them, what adjustments we need to make. And when somebody does do something, we take that moment to celebrate it because it's an accomplishment. So I think that's very, very important. And if more people did that and they were more open, things would go a lot smoother and they would feel a lot better, because I think it's one of those energy exchanges, especially, that we appreciate, because we get the complete opposite from the world 24/7. I could open up my phone right now and go on YouTube, go on Instagram, go on Facebook, and maybe not so much the people I know, but the suggestions are always controversial or negative. And what you just described is that one little blip of positivity that you can insert. I think that helps you more than anything, your psyche, especially in this business, that you get that email or call, hey, we need this, the escrow's falling apart and everybody's freaking out. You need those moments of gratitude and moments of like, hey, we're doing something good here. I think that's crucial. Very, very crucial.
Totally agree. So, Brian, we touched on this, right? Like, there's a lot going on in the world right now. I think agents always face a fair amount of pressure, right? One of the things that I tell my team at the company is, to the point of what I call agent empathy, is we're a technology company who supports agents, right? Agents first for us. But I said, how would you feel? I tell this to my team. How would you feel if you were in an industry that, generally speaking, isn't well respected, and that's a fact, and it's a sad fact. And two, that every new tech startup that came up was basically trying to take your job, right? Like, you're just starting from a really tough place. So when you compound onto that, fears about the economy and the election and the pandemic and all of these things, like, how do you talk to an agent who is just stuck in this? Like, they're curled up in bed, right, instead of taking advantage of this. Talk a little bit about that.
I think that, like, you brought that up, right? And since I've been in the business 7 years, every week something is coming, or something came out, or there's something else that we should fear, whether it's technology, a new pandemic, these new mosquitoes are going to be released and they're going to kill everybody. Like, in the last 7 years, maybe it's a little bit more obvious now with what's going on because the media is pushing it more, but literally every week or two, I could have had a reason to stay in bed and say, well, it's over. Absolutely. I don't have a chance. I'm going to be replaced, right? So the way I can break this down to people in the simplest way, and this is the conversations I have daily with myself and agents around me, is, look, there's going to be two things and two categories in life that things are going to fall under: what you can control and what you can't control, right? What's being spoon-fed to you 24/7, what we've been taught to focus on, is what we can't control. Yes. So if I take a concept like, I don't know, what's going on in the world right now with the pandemic, you as an individual, you can't control what's going to happen. I can't control if they shut down my business. I can't control if the police come and knock on my door and say, hey, man, you got to shut this interview off right now and go home. I have zero control over that. What I can control is, okay, let me look at my world. What can I do? Can I go to the office? Yeah. Can I make a phone call? Yes. Can I work on my business? Yes. Can I clean up my database? Sure. Can I set up a meeting with somebody via Zoom who can't meet in person? Yes. You see, now I'm directing my mind towards something that's productive and where something can be done. When you focus your mind on something that cannot be resolved, and that's the question you ask yourself, can I control this or no? And you'll find the answer, no or yes, right? Because when you focus on something you can't control, that breeds insanity in your mind because your mind is literally designed to figure things out. So if I put something in your mind that you can't figure out, I just gave you the recipe for disaster because now you're going to be stuck in bed in your emotions, trying to figure something out that you can't, thinking I can figure this out. I'm just not good enough or I'm not smart enough. So focus on what you can control. If that means, hey, I can go to the office for 1 hour and make calls, then do that, right? Because it's about, and I just shared something on my story on Instagram last night. There was a post that I had done 7 years ago to the day, which is like almost right when I got licensed. And I wrote something like, hey, this is about small wins every day. I'm reading a little bit every day. I'm making calls every day. I'm going door to door. This is the recipe for success. And it's cool because just focusing on that, regardless of what's going on around me, I can see the improvements and I know this is building momentum. And that post is from 7 years ago, ladies and gentlemen.
Wow.
That's what it's about. So the more I directed my mind towards my world, what I can control, man, everything changed. Now I live more peacefully. I get more stuff done. And there's less emotional roller coasters throughout the day, which is what I think people need to manage the most. I had an hour and a half lecture last night on my coaching regarding, state management and mastering your emotions. And we talked a lot about this stuff in particular in detail, because this is the number one crippler, I think, of people's dreams in this business and in the world is you're up and down. One day you feel like you're on top of the world. The next day you don't want to get out of bed, like Randy said. You can find as much as possible that middle ground where you're efficient and you're not swaying too much to either side. You become an unstoppable force, let me tell you, because I've been operating more like that recently. And man, it is a game changer for sure. However, it's a process and you always have to check your state of mind. Absolutely. Am I focusing on something right now? That's the question, ladies and gentlemen. Am I focusing right now on something I can control or that I can't? And if you realize it's something that you can't, you got to drop it and move along.
Brian, I've actually got your story up right now here. Hang on a second. Let me fix this because I think it's a really, really good point. 1 second here. It's not showing up for me for some reason. There we go. Here's your post 7 years ago. So you said as a caption, it is done day by day. So true. It's crazy how quickly your situation changes when you set a goal, focus on it and say, I won't stop until I get it. I've also realized how important it is to continue educating yourself by reading, learning, etc. So true. And how all that contributes to strengthening your mindset, which is ultimately what takes you to the top. So simple, yet so amazing what it brings. It's, man, mindset. Right? I mean, mindset, and that mindset drives you to do the things that you need to do, constantly learning, constantly educating, meeting people, finding the positivity, celebrating the wins. Like these are small things, but man, they all contribute to success.
It's in the word. What is mindset? My mind is set on something. Mindset. That's it. And all you described in that was what I was focused on, my goals and accomplishing them and doing it day by day and saying, I'm not going to stop until I achieve it. That's a very, we can say narrow focus. However, it's effective versus, oh my God, this, oh my God, that. Oh, this person just said this. And then now your mind is all over the place versus if you just focus on what you're doing, man, you'll be so effective that after a week, you'll say, damn, what a great week. Because you only focus on the things that you should have focused on.
And that narrowing, just since you brought it up, Brian, that narrowing it's universally important if you ask me, right? When somebody comes to me with 20 words, I look at how to cut it down to 10 words, right? Try to boil everything down to its essence. When people say I'm doing all of these things, it's about doing this things. I think I may have told you before, I don't remember, I had a guest on, he's a good friend, his name is Mark Choey. He's the founder of Climb Realty. Well, they sold the Realogy, so they don't exist anymore. But he's the founder of Climb Real Estate. And he said to himself, he said, I want to be the #1 condo salesperson in San Francisco. That is a lofty goal, right? He literally found a brand new building, bought an apartment, moved in, ended up selling 40% of the units in that building. He referred business, Bryan, across the street. The building across the street, he referred that business out. So you talk about a narrow focus, and he didn't get to number 1, but he got to number 2 for 5 years. Number 2 is still pretty badass to be the number 2 condo salesperson in San Francisco. But everything is about narrowing. Nobody ever is successful by saying, oh, let me broaden out my plan and my vision and all of that stuff.
Yeah, which is what a lot of people do, especially in this business. Case in point, they're looking 20 steps ahead. I have somebody who's just beginning the process of getting licensed, and they're asking me questions about what a good closing gift is for somebody. I'm like, dude, you're a million steps ahead. Like, let's focus on getting your license first.
But there's a reason they do that, Bryan, right? There's a reason they do that, because they understand that. Like, that's the easy part. It's the fun part of it, right? It's so natural for us to go to like, oh, should I buy him a set of like Cutco knives, or like what do people do these days? Again, you could wrap your head around that, whereas it's hard to wrap your head around the other stuff, and that's a mistake that a lot of people make.
Yeah, and I think we get too caught up sometimes in concepts instead of the experience of it, and that's why I've always preached that to people constantly. Even something I give you or that Randy gives you, put it in practice and test it for yourself. Yes. If I tell you a certain line works on expires, don't take my word for it. Exercise and use that line 1,000 times and come to your own conclusion of its efficiency. So that's really what it's about. And I think sometimes people get caught up doing things like that, like we mentioned, what's the closing gift, because they feel like they're accomplishing something. Yes. When in reality, get your license and let's get to work. Right. And then let's take 1 or 2 things and apply that until we achieve a level of mastery over it, versus what you just said, which is, oh, let's broaden and be okay at a million things. No, let's get very razor sharp and good at 2 or 3 things. Then we can add, instead of being decent or below average at 100 things.
That's exactly right. Jack of all trades, master of none. Right. I feel like a broken record on this, but man, it is about narrowing. It is about being authentic to who you are and accepting the fact that not everybody's going to like you, and that's okay. Like, that is totally okay. And I had a guest on last week, and I haven't read the book. Apparently it's from a book. It says eat the frog, right? So you got to do the hardest things first, right? Eat that frog, because in real estate, man, you don't know what's right around the corner. Deal could be blown up, or there could be, on the bright side, some new transaction that comes in, and you got to get ready for it. So eat that frog, and don't be thinking about closing gifts first. Geez, Bryan, if you can believe it, it's been 30 minutes already. I can't believe we're still talking. It's been 30 minutes. I feel like we just got started.
I know, right? It's because we always just chit chat and it's real casual back and forth. That's why.
I love it. Well, Bryan, if you're down to do this again, I'm down to do this again. But is there anything else you want to talk about today?
Yeah, I mean, we can do it again. It just really depends on what people want to hear more of. I'm open to talk about many things, even if it's not related to real estate at all. If it helps the audience and they find value from it, then, I'm all for it. I just think right now, what we just finished discussing, which is focusing on what you can control, is the most important thing you can do right now, because that's going to lead to increased productivity and you feeling more optimistic about circumstances. And if you can do those 2 things, I think you have a really good shot at beating out the majority of people, because what I just described is the antithesis of the majority of people in and outside of real estate right now. Anybody who I talk to outside of my circle is just, we're doomed. Oh my God. Yeah. There's not 1 ounce of positivity or optimism coming out of them. It's just oozing negativity, right? And pessimism, right? And you're never going to be productive with that. However, we're all adults here. You have 100% control over what you're going to focus on and how you decide to react to what's going on and how to view the world. And if you adopt these better filters that are more conducive to you producing, right, then you're good to go. Like right now, I would tell people, try going door to door. I know many of you listening to this right now are thinking everyone's going to freak out. I can't do it. We've been going door to door, not as much as before, but we've been doing it. And the response has been overwhelmingly positive. Everybody is hungry for social interaction right now. They're like, oh my God, a human being is at my door. Right? I haven't had 1 person get upset, and I'm doing it without a mask. Without a mask or gloves or a hazmat suit and all that stuff, right? So if you're skeptical about it, I would say go knock on a couple doors and then report back to us and say how it was, because I guarantee you it's going to go way different than what you thought. And that's one example of the mind binding you to a negative thought or belief versus you going out and experiencing it yourself and seeing what's actually going to happen.
Yeah. Interesting. That's amazing. Fantastic. Well, that's great advice. Hey, Bryan, as always, I enjoy our chats, so I appreciate you taking the time out of your crazy schedule. I'm interested to follow this growth and this journey, right, of turning Team BC into this global brand, right? You're off to a great start. You've got those seeds planted in different markets. I'm fascinated to sort of follow along on that journey with you.
Oh, it's going to be great, man. I'm estimating by the end of the year, I'll have at least 2, if not 3 more expansion teams in different states and cities. So I'm looking forward to growing it too. I've been overwhelmingly just rushed with people from like Australia and like the Middle East and Europe. Like, hey, we want to grow Team BC. So I'm planting a lot of seeds, Canada as well. So we'll see. But I think by the end of the year, I'll at least double what I have and have 4 or 5 teams up and running.
That's awesome. I love it. I love it. All right, Bryan, I'll let you get about your day. Thanks so much for taking the time and sharing this great learnings and information and advice, frankly, with all of our agents out there.
Cool. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
All right, Bryan, we'll talk to you soon.
See ya.
All right. Well, there you have it. So again, follow along. So Bryan Casella on Instagram, link below. YouTube, tons of great videos, tons of subscribers. I just really like his perspective on things. I think it's well-grounded. I think he's super smart, which is something that resonates with me. And this idea of sort of narrowing your focus, this idea that you focus on what you can control and you don't get overwhelmed by all the things that are going on. All of these things are critical to success. In fact, these are sort of table stakes, right? Like this is the foundation by which you're building your business. And if you're not aligned from the foundation, then you're going to be doing the wrong things. You are going to be off on your trajectory. There's this funny saying in golf, right? That if your putter face is off by 1 degree on a 15-foot putt, you're going to miss that putt, right? So you have to be aligned from the very, very beginning. So with that, we're going to wrap up the show today. So until tomorrow, be safe, be healthy, be happy. Get out there, get your mindset in the right place, and get after it.